Once upon a time, there was one shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day staying lonely pasture with the sheep.
Once upon a time, we was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, they study in lonely pasture with the sheep. The boy who cried wolf. Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep. One day, the boy was bored. He decided to play a joke on the village. He ran to the village and cried, "Wolf, help! Is a wolf attacking my sheep?"
Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze a mountain pasture outside the village. All days he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.
Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.
Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.
The boy who cried wolf. Once upon a time, there was a young spider boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to the graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, he studied in the lonely pasture with the sheep. Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture yesterday the beach. All day he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep. The boy who cried wolf. Once upon a time there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep. Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.
Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day he stayed in the lonely pasture out with the sheep.
Once upon a time, there was a lone shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, they stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.
The boy who cried wolf. Once upon a time there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning the boy took his father's sheep to graze on the mountain pasture outside the village. All day he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.
Once upon a time, there was a young shepherd boy. Every morning, the boy took his father's sheep to graze on a mountain pasture outside the village. All day, he stayed in the lonely pasture with the sheep.